Hi guys, Veronica Spriggs here. Today we're going to be using Photoshop and I'm going to show you a photo editing technique converting our photographs to black and white. I have two photographs open and you can see they're two very different styles so that you can see this effect applied to two different images. A lot of times when we want to convert an image to black and white, we'll go to Adjustments and hit the Desaturate, which of course will remove all the tone from your image and leave you with a black and white image. I'm going to show you how to create a much more dramatic version of a black and white photo. This method will give you a lot of control over your tones, your midlights, your highlights, your contrast, your brightness, and it will give you a much more striking black and white image. So we're going to go into Image, Adjustments, Black and White. You'll want to play around with your sliders. Depending on the image that you've chosen, you may or may not have some of these different colors, your greens, cayennes, blues, magentas. A lot of the times you'll find that most photos are going to really focus on the reds, the yellows, and sometimes the greens. But I find that primarily I'm usually working with the red and green sliders. So I'm going to go ahead and adjust my image. Play around with the sliders until you find the desired effect. Okay, now that I've got my black and white adjusted, I'm going to go ahead and add a tint to the photograph. And you can do that by selecting Tint. Just put a little check mark there. And you'll use your hue slider to adjust the color range. Sometimes you'll see some really nice photos with that blue hue, which is very nice. I'm going to go for a somewhat sepia type tone. And now I'm going to lower my saturation a bit. You can play with this, boost it up, bring it down. I'm going to have my saturation really low. And there's the effect that I like. I'm going to go with that. Select OK. I'm going to toggle off my preview just so you can see the difference from the original photo. And now with my black and white settings applied. Select OK. Now I'm going to go in and boost up the brightness a bit. And I'm going to create an adjustment layer using the brightness contrast control. Play with your slider till you get a desired effect. And I'm happy with that, so I'm going to go OK. Now I'm going to come over to my brightness layer, right click on my layer and go to blending options. And I'm going to blend if. Holding down my Alt key, I'm going to bring this slider all the way over. Select OK. Toggle that on and off so that you can see there's a slight difference. And now I'm going to change this blending mode layer to soft light. Now I'm going to add a layer mask. Now I'm going to go over to my levels. And I'm going to Control I. Now I'm going to adjust my highlight slider to about 240. I'm going to select a soft brush got my hardness set to 0, brush size 100, and I'm going to begin painting over her eyes. I'm going to set this layer mode to screen. And you can see that now I've really brought her eyes out a bit and they're not so contrasty. I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur. And that's going to soften up those edges a bit. Set my blur to about 8 pixels. I'm going to invert my colors here and paint back over where you can see the blur is coming from around her face. Okay, that should do it. And now I'm going to lower the opacity of this screen layer. I've set my opacity around 42, and now you can see that she still has the smoky eye, but it's not as dark and contrasty as it was before. I'll show you how it was without your layer mask. Very dark, very dramatic, almost too dark and dramatic because you can't really see her eyes as well. So toggle that back on and you have a much nicer effect. Now to finish this out, I am going to brighten up her eyes a little bit. I'm going to do that by choosing my polygon lasso tool. My feather is set to 1, and I'm going to select around her eyes. Only the whites of her eyes. Hold down my Shift key so I can begin selecting again on the other side. Okay, now that my selection is complete, I'm going to select, modify, feather, and I've got a feather set to a radius of 2. Select OK. Edit, copy merged, and paste. Now I'm going to set this layer to color dodge. I'm going to now go to Image, Adjustments, Black and White, and we're going to change that to black and white. You can just use the default settings as they are. And adjust your opacity layer. I've got an opacity layer of about 46%. I'll toggle that on and off so you can see the difference, how much brighter her eyes shine now. And we've just completed our first photograph. Now we're going to get started on our next image. We're going to go into Image, Adjustments, Black and White. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and add a tint as well. This time I'm going to go over into the blues. Lower my saturation. Okay, now I've got my adjustments complete. I've got my red set to 23, yellows at 43, greens 62, 120, 25, and 9. And my hue is set to 246, my saturation to 5. And I'll toggle off the preview so that you can see what the original was like. Okay, now that I've got my black and white applied, I'm going to go to curves. And I'm going to add an adjustment layer. Now I want to create a stop point for my deeps, midtones, and highlights. I'm going to set my highlights to about 196. Okay, my curves layer is complete, and you can see that it bumped up the contrast quite a bit. Now I'm going to go to brightness contrast, play with my brightness slider. I'm going to set that to 32. And bump up my contrast to about 35. Now I'm going to merge these layers. I'm going to duplicate my original layer. Set it to soft light. And bring the opacity down to about 46. Now I'm going to apply a blur, a Gaussian blur, to around 39, and select OK. And you can see that it sort of blurs out our background. And you can see that that adds a nice soft effect, giving a blur to the background and making her stand out. Now I'm going to go to my levels and punch up the brightness just a teeny bit. I think that looks great. I'm going to go ahead and merge these layers. And I'm going to bring in my original photograph so that you can see where we started. We have our original and our very striking black and white photo. I hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial. I'm Veronica Spriggs, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.